Obviously, it's been a few years since you've held this in-person summit. The last time you and I talked was at the last time you held one in person in Beijing in 2019. A lot has changed. Why are you willing to go high profile as a major CEO of a company from America when others, they want to stay low profile and keep their heads low? How do you assess the U.S.-China relationship and the impact it's having on business?
Okay, well, first of all, thrilled to be back again after all this time. And I think it's important for a CEO to visit their people and their clients around the world, particularly when you think times are a little more complicated, et cetera. But I think it's important for the viewership to understand there are like 3,000 investors here from around the world. There are hundreds of companies, Chinese and non-Chinese companies, learning about the world. We do research on 500 companies. That research circulates the world. And hopefully business could be for good to help countries lift up. I have enormous respect for the Chinese people. The modernization of this country has been extraordinary. And yes, there are some very complex issues that have to be dealt with.
At what point does Jamie Dimon have to become the diplomat? Look, Joe Biden has not spoken to Xi Jinping since November, the Bali meeting. Military-to-military discussions are being rebuffed and not even happening. Business to business is tenuous at best. What role can you and should you play while you're there?
Yeah, no, I think I would look at it a little bit differently. So there are conversations that took place recently that have been in the press, which I think are great. I mean, it's hard to resolve issues when you have the echo chamber in your own brain telling yourself what you already think. And I think business can be a force for good. But I don't represent the government. But everyone knows I'm an American patriot. So I'm sitting here in China, but I'm a red-blooded, full-throated, free enterprise capitalist, and so the governments have to talk. Every government has national security in mind, and how do they get better at national security? And I should point out is that this globe of ours has benefited from trade. It's benefited from all these things taking place, and so it's lifted. And even taking this country, they have benefited. I know there's criticism about the American global system, but that American global system has done an extraordinary. It's not American. If you go to America, a lot of Americans complain about NATO and WTO and WHO and the United Nations, but it's lifted up. Look what it's done for China. I think that the global system has been fabulous for China, and they may have complaints about it, just like the rest of us have complaints. But I'm thrilled to be here again. You have to go see your people and thank your people for what they've done, particularly through this terrible time of COVID, which I think has done a lot of damage to the world in a lot of different ways. So getting out is the right thing to do.
Yeah, what is your calculus? Has it changed over these 4 years on how you want to expand in China? Obviously, you're fully licensed up now. You were very productive during the pandemic. You got full JVs and full ventures in securities and in mutual funds and futures. You're pretty much well established on the mainland, which was your goal. But the things have changed. China's not necessarily the be-all, end-all anymore. We've had simultaneous crackdowns domestically on the platform economy, on property, on online gaming, on online education, not to mention COVID zero. You have a crackdown on consultancies. There's lots of pressure. I mean, are you recalculating your growth projection and the capability of that growth in China?
You went through a long list there, which I wouldn't agree with all of it. But I think when we do business in the country, and we do business in 100 countries around the world, we are there for the citizens of the country. And we're there, hopefully, through good times and bad times. We tend not to leave other than there's war or civil war. And so we're not predicting any of that here. Obviously, it's become a far more complex situation. For some for good reason, some not for good reason. And, there's risk. There's always going to be risk. And I think you'll see companies react to different things for different reasons. Some is their own resiliency. Some is obviously national security, will trump all other things. So when, our government tells us to do A, B, and C, we're going to do A, B, and C and support it. And I think there's a risk in China itself that, I've met with several people here. If you have more uncertainty, some of it caused by the Chinese government, well, of course, it's going to not just change foreign direct investment, which has gone up a little surprisingly, and I don't think they should assume that's going to continue, but it's going to change the people here, their own confidence, their own ability to invest and do things. And so, like I said, if people have deep conversations, respect each other, engage properly, I think the American government said all the right things recently, which is, because you heard it from Treasury Secretary Yellen, you heard it from President Biden, you heard it from National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan, you heard it from Secretary of State Tony Blinken, that this is not decoupling, this is de-risking. The world's changed a little bit. Obviously, they are concerned about the war in Ukraine. They should be. I think that's probably one of the most serious things affecting the future of the globe. And I mean the future of the globe for the next 50 years. And I think they're doing the right things. I'm completely supportive of that. And so, China is obviously going to do what they think is good for itself. And business might be a positive attribute. But national security will trump all other issues.
Now, I was just at G7 where we heard a lot of that rhetoric where they're de-risking, not decoupling. But again, the Chinese say it's one and the same. It's America trying to limit China's rise. And you've seen that bifurcation. There's more jargon, not to overemphasize all this jargon that's going out there. But again, do you see de-risking being different from decoupling?
Totally. I mean, look, Steve, you got to look at the facts. Trade actually went up last year, and I think de-risking means national security. Every country's going to determine that their own way. Now we're talking about very advanced chips. Well, that's kind of reasonable, not to help non-allies have things that can help the military. Obviously there are rare earths and things like that. So America's going to look at that. They were very clear. They're talking about they used the word, a small garden with high walls as opposed to everything. And we should hope that let's not make it everything. I think the business community is trying to help advise them on that. Then there's going to be companies doing things just for their own resiliency. That's a perfectly reasonable thing to do too. And then there's the big one, which is also this constant negotiation about trade, unfair trade, free access, fair access. That's been going on for my whole life with just about every country. And countries should learn about when they're legitimate concerns and when they're not legitimate concerns, and listen to each other deeply and adjust accordingly. So if you ask me, over time, yeah, there'll be less trade. It'll take years for these things to take place, but it won't be a decoupling. And the world will go on. I think, like I said, I think far more important is what's happening in Ukraine right now. And so hopefully this will sort out, and it'll never sort out if people don't talk. So I urge people, have some real deep conversation, get to know each other a little bit, each other's concerns about some of these issues, and things would be better if we had that.
Well, do you have these conversations as well? Because a lot of people do try to extrapolate what's happening in Ukraine with the potentiality in East Asia with Taiwan. We know Warren Buffett has divested completely its investment, Berkshire Hathaway's investment in Taiwan Semiconductor. There's nervousness, and that creates hesitancy for investment and fund flows, which are down, obviously. Trade deals are down. Do you see the direct correlation of the risks that have risen in East Asia because of Taiwan, because of what's happening in Ukraine, exacerbating that?
I think, look, I'm not an expert on Taiwan, and I would defer to Bob Gates and Henry Kissinger about how to de-escalate that situation. And obviously it adds to the tension and things like that. But remember, this is a world issue. All the countries around the world would be concerned about Taiwan and the outcome of that. I think what Ukraine showed people is that the world wasn't safe, that oil and gas supply chains aren't safe, food supply lines aren't safe. Everyone was started to relook at what is national security. You had Germany importing, I think it was half of their natural gas from Russia. So I think that did cause people to look at what are their alliances, what are their trade, what are the things, and obviously it's causing a lot of confusion and a lot of issues, but hopefully we'll make a lot of progress on it. And like I said, that comes with engagement. And that comes with, with both the American government and other folks, sitting down.
Yeah, I don't want to keep on harping on the negative side of it, but is there any scenario, the worst case scenario, that would make your investment, and look, it's a sizable investment in China, make it untenable for you?
Steve, you're going to repeat yourself over and over. We're here. We're going to support the Chinese people, the Chinese governments. We do business with 1,000 companies here. Half are multinationals coming in, half are local companies. We always have managed our risk that we can handle almost whatever happens around the world. And I am an American patriot. I will do what my government tells me. I'm going to salute like anybody else, but I can tell them what I think. And you can imagine that I've been very clear when I sit down with them what I think and what we think matters. And like I said, a lot of the business community I think could be very helpful in that. This is not a simple matter. And sometimes we oversimplify things in a way which actually damage, the ultimate outcomes.
Will you have an opportunity? Can you reveal whether you're going to meet with Li Qiang, the premier, or any of the other senior Chinese leaders? And what would you like to get from them?
I'm meeting with a very limited amount of Chinese leaders. I met with one, but I'll keep that conversation private. And like I said, I'm here for our people. I'm here for these clients. I think it's great that this is taking place. I think humanity is better off this type of thing. And obviously, national security will reign supreme. And so, but you don't stop doing one because of the other. And so, like I said, I'm thrilled to be here. And it's amazing what I've seen take place in China over the last 25 years, partially because of the global system. And I think they should be clear about that. And, they have their own problems here. 20% unemployment in youth. I mean, that's a scary number. And so, growth, they need growth too. And confidence is very important for growth.
When do you see cross-border deal-making picking up? It's been quite a nadir on that front.
Cross-border between China and other people, or just globally?
Right. Well, let's talk about China. Say China, U.S., or outbound from China and the like.
Outbound. I don't know the answer to that. I think there are always a lot more conversations you think, and obviously it's been damped a little bit. I think America is still open for business. Chinese companies are going to be a little concerned. We've had CFIUS for a long time now, but I would say we're still generally open for business. And if you're in a Chinese company and want to do something, look at it. Don't back off just because you're afraid of something, and get some advice and help on how you can go about that the right way. But America is still open for business, and I think you've heard that from Secretary Yellen, Secretary Blinken, and all those. We still believe in open and fairly free markets.